IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Hey, Raghavi, what do you love most about the breaks that we take?
Between seasons, it's nice to read stuff that's not true crime and murder and fraud and stuff like that. Also, there's a lot of puppy videos in my Instagram.
Yes.
That's sort of pending. It's nice to watch that. Play with my cats. Good scene overall.
Aww, I love that journey for you.
Thanks.
And I think this time we had an exceptionally long break. It was helpful though because I was able to move back and, be in the same city as you would be in the same studio recording. Oh my God.
I know. How exciting.
It
But
is.
also, it's really exciting to get back to the podcast.
Are you just saying that because we got bullied by our fans and friends who kept asking us, when is season 3 coming? When is season 3 coming? When is season 3 coming?
No, guys, Nisha's kidding about that.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, there's a sniper right there.
Wait, what? Have you ever wondered why women don't do more crime?
Well, we're here to tell you there's misconduct all the time.
Women are thieves and murderers.
That's gross misconduct.
Con artists, money launderers.
Criminal misconduct.
Financial fraud that's hard to track.
Takes some planning, but still misconduct.
Even breaching a contract.
That's more civil though.
It's misconduct. It's misconduct. We tell you all about women that suck. Things that make you say, what the? It's misconduct.
Hello, and welcome to Misconduct. We are a podcast and we talk about Indian women on the wrong side of the law. Some of them murderers, some of them con women, financial fraud, just lovely stuff overall.
Yes.
And I guess this week we're talking about the madame of a brothel and an old-timey gangster from the 60s. I am Raghavi.
And I am Nisha, and welcome to the season 3 of the Misconduct podcast. I know what I said in the intro, but the moment you say the words, hello, I get so excited. I'm like, yes, we're back to doing this. But yes, as Raghavi said, this time we are covering a brothel madame and a gangster. Because this first episode of season 3 is going to be about Gangubai Kathiawadi, or in some circles, as she was known, Gangubai Kothewali. So, Gangubai was a woman who existed and thrived in the 1960s in Kamathipura area of Mumbai. This is essentially like a red light district in the city. She is known to have been a sex worker and a madam of a brothel. But most importantly, she was known as a social activist because she was working for sex workers' rights and as well as the well-being of the children and orphans in the Kamathipura area.
That's right.
So we're given to understand that Gangubai's work, although involved in the flesh trade, it's aimed at sensitizing the country's perception of sex workers to get the country to basically imagine them as people with hopes and dreams and rights and, more importantly, agency. This is something that we talk about all the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
The way she did this, it was through a series of acts involving hooliganism and bootleg alcohol trading. So it kind of puts her on the fence.
To be fair, you just described every woman that we talk about on this podcast.
Yes.
Such and such woman did a bad thing, but also a good thing, and maybe another bad thing. Oh no! Are women complex creatures?
Oh,
is that what it is?
Are we not written by Chetan Bhagat?
Hey. Go on.
Okay. So I just want to say one thing. We all know Gangubai, of course, because of the latest movie based on her, in which she is played by Bollywood actress and forever 12-year-old Alia Bhatt.
Hey, she's married now.
Oh my God, she is. But she still looks 12.
Yeah, she's 29. How do I know this? I very, very closely followed her birthday reels.
Oh God.
Anyway, moving on.
So this movie is directed by Sanjay Leela Bhansali.
Right. So, big sets, huge budgets, loads of cleavage that don't really have any context
Yes.
in the plot. But still, they're there.
Correct.
That's it.
It is always there. But before this movie came out, there wasn't much information about Gangubai out in the public. However, once the marketing started for this movie and it picked up, and it was basically just Alia Bhatt running around in that white sari going, do
Oh God, yeah.
my God.
My Instagram was just that
Right?
for months, I feel.
But that was good because of that, there was
Mhm.
like a sudden influx of information about Gangubai.
Yeah, that's actually true. We started reading up for this episode a little before the movie came out. And suddenly, when the promos started happening, there were people like trying to visit her old home.
Hmm.
Her home being Gangubai, not Alia Bhatt. Don't stalk Alia Bhatt. Visit her old home. They were trying to interview her adopted daughter,
Yeah.
supposedly, and her grandson. There were also a series of lawsuits that were initiated against the
Mm.
makers of this movie for various reasons. But yeah, we suddenly got this huge influx of information about Gangubai, and that was really helpful for this particular episode.
Yeah, but what's a Sanjay Leela Bhansali movie without a couple of lawsuits?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we will be honest, we wanted to make this particular episode several months ago, but
Mhm.
we thought, like, let's wait it out. Let's wait for this movie to come just so that we can pick up information about Gangubai.
And we were right.
We were so right.
Instincts. Sure.
But Raghavi, let's start with the basics.
Yes, Nisha, please tell
So,
me. Mhm.
What are the primary sources we have for this particular episode?
Oh, okay. So one of the sources we have is this book by Hussain Zaidi. It's called The Mafia Queens of Mumbai and it was published in 2011.
Superb. Yeah. What else? What other sources do we have?
That's the only source we have.
Isn't that book like a historical fictional
Yeah.
account?
Yeah, it is.
So there's just going to be a lot of speculation.
Yeah, I think so. So the thing is, after this movie came out, there have been like quite a bit of effort, mostly by, newspapers, somehow even page 3, I guess, to figure out who Gangubai was, especially, what the last years of her life was like, trying to figure out basic things like timeline. Even we're not entirely sure exactly when a lot of this stuff happened, So we're trying to use a lot of that stuff. But unfortunately, the biggest source, so to speak, we have is this one book. And as much as we can, we'll try to get whatever we can weed out of it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, works for me. Let's just get into it.
Mhm.
But before we start, this episode is going to be triggering for certain folks. There are depictions of sexual assault, kidnapping, sexual slavery, trafficking, including minors, and sex work. So please, please, please proceed with caution. This podcast is not suitable for children. Listener discretion is advised.
Now let's take a minute to understand some background about Kamathipura, because context setting is the essence of my soul and I truly love it.
I feel like my yay was disappeared into myself because it was so high pitched.
Yeah, it really was.
But I'm very excited.
Only all the dogs here heard it though. So in the late 1700s, back in the British reign of India, Kamathipura was a small marshy district in Bombay and it housed a number of construction workers. The word Kamathi actually just stands for labourer, particularly those that migrated from the neighbouring state of Andhra Pradesh. So by the late 1800s, it was one of those districts though that sort of got rehabilitated, primarily for exotic consorts. And the women that were part of this district were not just Indian, they were, also of continental European and Japanese descent. Just basically, anybody the British could just happily force into sexual slavery.
Wow. What a wonderfully messed up equal opportunities employer.
Yeah, but not employer.
Fair.
Yeah,
Fair.
the kind
Yes.
of atrocities these women faced, first being abducted from their homes, then forced to travel to far off lands. They couldn't speak the language there and they were sort of made to fend for themselves by selling their bodies. And none of this was really, their choice. It was kind of forced upon them.
Yeah.
And to say that the women of Kamathipura did not have any agency as women obviously would be a huge understatement. Post-independence, Kamathipura sort of remained the only open red light district in the area as well. So they sort of continued from the British all the way to what we have today. The thing is, especially post-independence, thousands of sex workers flocked to the area, particularly women that were abducted from Nepal and Bangladesh. And there was a point in time when Kamathipura was the largest red light district in all of Asia. So in the 40s to the 50s, especially in India, it was kind of a pretty flourishing area. I use the word flourishing very loosely.
Yeah.
It was just very densely populated with sex workers all looking for work, and people would go there, of course.
Yeah. And in the 60s to 80s, there was something else that was flourishing in Bombay, which was the underworld.
Oh no.
Yay. So, okay, granted, it's not as organized as it is today, but at that time, the dreaded Pathan gang, along with other gangsters such as Haji Mastan and Varadaraj and Mudalayar, basically they divided and ruled the slum-ridden streets of Bombay. Their trades included everything from gambling dens to illicit liquor, debt collection, managing the budding real estate mafia.
A simpler time, wasn't it? Before the cable wars of Hasina Parkar, I guess.
Yeah.
You remember that from season 2?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
If you don't, dear listener, go back and listen to season 2. There was such a long break. What were you doing till now?
That's true, but that was smooth. Also, Hasina Parkar was season 1.
Oh no. Still, go back and listen and confirm it for us.
Why did I say season 2? I'm so sorry. Season 1, Hasina Parkar was season 1. Please go listen to that episode. You'll get a lot more context about the Mafia in Bombay.
Yes. So now the Pathan gang, it was like headed by this dreaded Kareem Lala. Lala, amongst other things, was known for his kidnapping, contract killing, extortion rackets. But he was also known to take on the mantle of a sort of town mayor. He would hold like these weekly darbars and discuss the issues that the residents are facing and try to resolve them. In his own weird way, I guess there is some sort of morality associated with him.
Yeah, sure. As moral as contract killing can be.
Anyway. So now the Pathan gang wasn't just doing, all this racketeering and such. Some of their men were misbehaving with the women in Kamathipura. There are some accounts of how like gang members would treat these women as their own personal slaves. And this behavior, while well known, was almost accepted to be normal. But the behavior of one such man is why we have Gangubai's story.
That's right. And before we sort of get into that, let's take a really quick break.
Yes, let's do that.
All right.
You're the people pleaser, right? Oh, yeah. Or then desperately seeking the one? Oh, wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough. Oh. So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode. Oh, no. And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IBM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.
Welcome back, everyone, from the break. This is where we finished up. Prior to the break, we started talking about Kamathipura, how it is, what it is now, and a very, very brief sort of intro into the fact that by this point, the Mafia in Bombay was sort of becoming a thing. So let's delve now into some first-hand accounts regarding Gangubai's life. As you mentioned earlier, there is an account by Hussain Zaidi, the author of a book with a series of stories, of which one includes Gangubai's life. He himself has unfortunately admitted that his work is partly fictionalized. And we have some thoughts about this. We'll get to it a little later. But for now, let's roll with the information that he gives us.
Yeah.
So in his book, Mafia Queens of Mumbai, Zaidi mentions that Gangubai's original name was Ganga Harjivan Das Kathiawadi. And she's from a small village in Gujarat called Kathiawad.
Yes.
She was likely born in the 1920s. If we are to presume that she's about 50 years old in the early 1970s. Yeah. Do we know how old she was exactly? No. We just don't. We don't have a birth certificate, unfortunately. But we do have a picture of her from the 70s where she appears to be at least past 50 years of age.
Wow, that was some solid, like super useless math.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I never said I was perfect. Anyway, my mom's a maths teacher, so if she's listening to this, I'm sorry, Mom, you failed. So anyway, there appears to be a man in Gangubai's life by the name of Ramnik Lal. He was apparently Gangubai's father's 28-year-old accountant. So she appears to have spoken to him a lot, about particularly she really loved movies, and she had these dreams of being an actress, like this big Bollywood actress, and all the fame and money that came with it. And Ramnik told her that he knew people in Mumbai who could help her become an actress. And of course, she believed him. She's a young, impressionable woman who probably has not had much exposure outside of her hometown. Yeah. So, I wouldn't be surprised that happened. I would have been the same way at the age of 18 and 20, quite phenomenally stupid. I still am. But, and eventually Gangubai fell in love with him.
Oh, no.
Yes. So she followed him to Mumbai, where he immediately sold her to a brothel madam in Kamathipura for anywhere between 500 to 1,000 rupees, it looks like.
What? That feels slightly less, no? Like, wouldn't just a kidney cost like 50,000 rupees?
Yeah, but this was the 50s. So inflation, I don't know.
Okay, even accounting for inflation, wouldn't it be I don't know, man, what's the current market value of a kidney?
No, listen, we can't do that. No, I'm not validating that with the response.
But you just did.
I know I did, but this is very uncomfortable for me. In any case, we're told that Gangubai initially resisted the brothel madam's requests. I use the word requests very loosely. Obviously, there was no consent involved here. She was obviously not going to be asked about this nicely. But at some point, it seems Gangubai either gave in either like sort of said, fine, let me work with the system, or she was sort of broken in. We don't know which one it really is. But
Oh
yeah.
man, that is depressing. I can't even imagine what she would have gone through.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even want to celebrate this as some form of like womanly resilience because like we're always told as women, particularly like, oh, you got to be strong.
Yeah, I know.
No, I want to be weak. I want to be a sad weakling just because I can. So it's really sad that she had to go through this. I don't even want to be like.
And that too, this kind of situation to be strong, like why do you have to be in this position at all?
Exactly. It's
Like,
really awful. And anyway, it's quite unsettling and really sad.
It is. But we are inclined to believe this story because there was something similar said by her family members later on as well. So there was a video published by Outlook magazine on YouTube in March 2022. So it details like a Kamathipura's resident's account of Gangubai. And the woman said that she is Gangubai's adopted daughter, Bappi, although we can't really verify this. Bappi said, and we quote, "My mother came to Mumbai to become an actress, but then she ended up as a sex worker. She wasn't in the wrong though. She fought for the rights of the people here. She was an educated woman." Another man who appears to be Gangubai's grandson and said that the gangster Karim Lala was her Rakhi brother. So that's the brother identified as one of those primarily Hindu traditions of Raksha Bandhan. They also talk about how she met Karim Lala. So remember when we said that the gangs of Mumbai were treating the women of Kamathipura like their own personal slaves?
Yeah.
So Hussain Zaidi's story says that there was one such man who worked for Karim Lala. He entered the brothel that Gangu was working in and physically and sexually assaulted her.
Oh, God.
So the incident apparently landed her in the hospital for 7 days, and post this, she approached Karim Lala for justice at one of his famed darbars. So he decided to just beat up this gang member in public, ensuring that no one would raise a hand on Gangubai ever again. However, the story narrated by Gangubai's supposed adopted family skips all of these details, and they state that Gangubai sought out Karim Lala and asked for permission to tie Rakhi for him. And he obliged and since that point, he just considered her to be his sister.
You know what's interesting about this? We actually have no idea if Gangubai sort of did this on her own. Like, you know, as in, did she go to Karim Lala and say, you know, this is what happened to me. I went through, you know, blah, blah, blah. I went through sort of immense trauma and I need you to help me.
Yeah.
Or did she just go to him just, you know, preemptively?
Yeah.
Like, we genuinely don't know this. This is fiction. I mean, this is in the book.
Yeah.
This is also in the movie. Is it fictionalized? We genuinely don't know. Or did she even go to him? Did he come to her? That sounds like a movie I would want to see more. But no, I mean, basically, we don't really know a lot about this. But we do know that regardless of how this sort of worked out, Gangubai did see sort of an opportunity for some sort of growth.
Correct.
Even if that's not necessarily a personal kind of growth, you know, even if it's for the community that she's in, whatever it is, she saw that amount of growth that's possible there. And she decided to use that opportunity to better her own position in a way as well.
Yeah.
This association with Lala, of course, would have offered her not just some sort of protection, you know, from the mafia, otherwise, even from his own men, but also some sort of avenue to make more money and maybe even support the women who are working with her.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, whatever it is, we can see that Gangubai had that streak of an opportunist, I guess. That's the whole point of this, right?
Fair, yeah.
So going back to her story, eventually the madam of her brothel died and Gangubai took over instead. And then over several years of work and contesting elections, Gangubai eventually took over all of Kamathipura. So there was apparently a time in the 1960s when Gangubai was the madam of every single brothel in the whole of Kamathipura. And she seems to have just ruled the place with an iron fist. There are also some super unreliable sources that say that Gangubai was likely using her influence with Lala to run her own illicit liquor ring. I mean, it's unlikely that she could have done it without his explicit support.
Of
right?
course.
I mean, she's smart. She wouldn't go against like a Karim Lala.
Yeah.
So if it did happen, was she using her own brothel to just run her side liquor business? Then, I mean, good for her.
Yeah, no, I'm great that you ended that with an inflection and a question mark. So listen, basically, guys, we don't like to encourage crime.
Yes.
But when a woman works in a largely male-dominated profession, including that of criminal activities, we do get a little excited.
Yes. Case in point, our Hasina Parker episode from season 1.
Yeah, that's a perfect reference now.
There is also some talk generally about how Gangubai was one of the few people in India to own a black Bentley in the 60s. I mean, I don't know. I can't do that if you don't have like a ton of money, right?
That's true. Actually, by the 60s, I've been told, I have read the act, but it's not specific to cars. But then the Indian Customs Act basically sort of imposed a lot of heavy duties on imported vehicles, even for personal use. So if she wanted to bring in a Bentley, madam must have really shelled out him some cash, not just for the car, I'm sure also potentially in bribes. It's possible. It is just what it is. And not to forget, how would she get the parts to fix up a Bentley?
I swear.
I can barely get parts for my Hyundai i10. Okay, it's so difficult. So I don't know how she was doing this, but she was rolling in dough by this point. So good for her.
Also, those tiny lanes of Kamathipura, can you imagine if the Bentley got scratched? I would die.
God.
That would be so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe we think that maybe she was a gangster. We don't really have enough proof for it, but it could have been plausible.
Yeah.
She was definitely a brothel madam, and she was running several brothels under her by the 1960s. But what I don't understand is if all of this is so speculative, then why have we dedicated a whole episode to Gangubai?
What do you mean?
Like, what's the crime in all of this?
Oh yeah, we didn't get to that at all. Sorry, yes. So yeah, parts of this are crimes. Parts of it aren't. So let's get into it. I'm sort of focusing specifically on the sex work aspect of it all because we don't know as much about the specifics of what she did.
Right.
Just generally, like illicit alcohol dealing is probably illegal. Just
Is
assume
it though?
that part of it. But let's talk about the sex work aspects, right?
Yeah.
So there are basically two legislations in India that deal with sex work. The Suppression of Immoral Traffic Act of 1956 is one of them. And it basically says that a sex worker can practice their trade privately, but not publicly solicit customers.
So sex work is legal in India?
Yeah, actually, kind of. Yeah, it is. The thing is, engaging in the sex trade yourself is not actually illegal as long as you don't solicit in a public place. Basically, you don't go up to someone in a public place and say, hey,
Okay.
So the thing is, you also can't do it in a group, basically. So you can't have a brothel or, commercially benefit from sex trade as a group. So sex trade as part of like this overall supply chain and service provision is not permitted. You obviously can't advertise yourself, for that. Which means, this is the sad part of this. Sex workers in India, they exist. It's a reality, right?
Yeah.
They are here. But because the laws as they are, they can't just sort of form a union and negotiate their rates or something. They're not protected that way,
Oh, so it's like Amazon, but for sex workers.
Yes, because unionizing anywhere, always, is a good idea. Collective bargaining is best. Also, it's only women. Men can't be sex workers in their individual capacity.
Hey, where is the diversity and inclusion essay?
This is where we should be focusing.
Correct.
On the men's rights campaign. Yep. So now the thing with sex workers is also in India, they do have certain rights. Not as employees because God forbid, they receive benefits like PFs and medical insurance, but they do get the same rights as all other citizens, including the additional right to rehabilitation. I'll get to that a little bit later.
Okay.
So now in 1986, this act that I mentioned earlier, it was amended by the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act.
Okay.
To clarify, this also does not make sex work illegal per se, but it takes a slightly harsher approach to trafficking, and it identifies prostitution effectively as a core reason for trafficking.
Come on. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because if sex work didn't exist, then humanity would entirely stop subjugating vulnerable boys, girls, men, and women into horrific conditions and trafficking them to be sold into sexual and other forms of slavery. Why didn't we just think of that?
Yeah,
Why
why
I
didn't
feel
we?
like we solved every problem ever.
Yeah, that's correct. Oh, hectic. No, but that's accurate, right? It sort of doesn't even take into account the fact that it's not really prostitution that's pushing it. There are so many other societal and institutional reasons as to why boys, girls, men and women are pushed into this business. So the new act does make some other things illegal. One is the act of a sex worker seducing or soliciting someone, irrespective of being in public. So, for example, you can't just go to a client and hand over a business card to them.
Okay.
So, sex work in a public place generally also continues to be banned. Clients can also be charged now under the act. I think that sort of helps in a little way. Also, pimps get prison time.
Oh, good.
Yes. So under the new law, as well as this sort of an extension of the old one, wasn't read as much into it, but now it can be. Gangubai would be a pimp.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So, she would have at some point been a sex worker.
Yeah.
But, by the end of this, she was a pimp, right?
Right.
She was also a woman who solicited her clients.
Oh.
So, depending on which of these she was booked for, her punishment could be anywhere between 3 months of imprisonment with fine or even 2 years of imprisonment with fine. Same for owning a brothel. Comes with the same punishment. So For all of these together, she's looking at quite a few years in jail.
Yeah, I mean, we've only covered the sex working part. If you are also talking about all of the other stuff that she did,
Oh, right.
like,
Yeah.
Gangsters / illicit liquor, all of that put together.
And I'm assuming illegally importing a freaking Bentley. I can only assume that.
Yeah, that too. So I guess
Yeah.
she'd be going away for a long time.
Oh, no.
But there's also been a lot of like political and legal back and forth on this particular topic.
Mhm.
In December 2009, the Supreme Court proposed legalization of sex work.
Mhm.
The court said, when you say it's the world's oldest profession and when you are not able to curb it by laws, why don't you legalize it? The court also said that no legislation anywhere in the world had successfully managed to stop the sex trade.
Mhm.
And legalizing it would allow authorities to monitor the trade, rehabilitate, and provide medical aid to those involved.
Mhm.
In 2011, the Supreme Court also held that sex workers deserve the right to live with dignity
Mhm.
under the Constitution's guaranteed fundamental rights.
Mhm.
It also passed an order to the central and state governments to focus on rehabilitating conditions for all sex workers that want to live with dignity.
Yeah, but that would involve effort on the part of the government, like setting up housing and
Yeah.
schools and social security.
Yep. So, what did the central government do instead? In 2012, they filed a plea before the Supreme Court stating that sex workers could not fall under the constitutional right to live with dignity because the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act outlaws prostitution entirely. Which is so wrong, so wrong. As Raghavi has said before, it only prohibits like brothels and has detailed punishments for pimps and that are trafficking humans.
Mhm. The thing is, the legislation is aimed at preventing trafficking. It actually doesn't bar all sex trade together because even back in 1956, even before this new act came in, people recognized that, hey, maybe it's kind of not their fault.
Yeah.
So maybe we shouldn't outrightly be like, oh, let's criminalize every single act of this. Also, the solution to all this is for the government to say, oh, I don't think they count as people under Article 21. So, oopsie. This is
That is-
ridiculous. Yeah.
But in any case, the Supreme Court agreed to enter the plea, and that's just where we're stuck for right now.
Yeah. You know what would not make you feel stuck, Nisha?
Wow, that's a hard pivot, man.
It is. I'm sorry. The other shows available on the IVM Podcast Network. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm really sorry for the extremely harsh segue, but this is what showbiz is, okay? All right. See you guys in a bit.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Piyush Gupta, president of Keystone, talks to Varun about how his experimental marketing agency is helping brands get on the metaverse. On Voices for Water, Karthik is joined by Dr. Anju Gaur, senior water resource management specialist. Together they navigate the landscape of Indian water data. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh dig into why exactly the taxes on petrol are so high. On Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka tells us how we can avoid taking a financial risk. And on Marathi Kirkitun, the Deshmukhs explore the beauty of the Devanagari font on the occasion of Akshaya Tritiya. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're following this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth is one of our biggest, most helpful things you can do for us. We'd really appreciate that. And also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. Go check out ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. You get a list of all of our YouTube channels there. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and the advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It's at ivmpodcast.com/survey. This really helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
Welcome back, everyone. So we're talking about Gangubai Kathiawadi, and her story doesn't end with the whole running a brothel and maybe side dealing in illicit liquor thing. No, there's so much more. Instead, we see a woman who appears to have spent her later years fighting for the rights of those in Kamathipura. Gangubai held a position of authority across Kamathipura that allowed her to provide infrastructure, rations, better living conditions for all of the sex workers who lived under her. It's also said that she campaigned for schools in the area to allow for the children of sex workers to study as well. And we know how important this is because education is usually the simplest way to break the chain of poverty and sex work, especially amongst the minors.
Yep.
Now, we don't have any data to support this other than Gangubai's apparent adoptive daughter and grandson, whose interview that we had summarized earlier. So take it with a pinch of salt.
Or, you could take it with a truckload of optimism because, I'd rather at this point believe that there is some hope for humanity.
Yes, well, there is one nice end to this story, by the way. That is if we believe Hussain Zaidi.
I believe him. Let's go for it.
So in the early 60s, sometimes a bit before the passing of the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, it is said that Gangubai met with him to ensure that the brothels of Kamathipura are not torn down. Apparently, she spoke at this women's summit, and that's what got the Prime Minister's attention. So there is a part... this is there in a lot of the books and a lot of the stories. We don't know if it's true. There's a part where Nehru says, why are you doing all this? Why don't you just settle down with your husband and be happy? And apparently she said, will you make me Mrs. Nehru?
Whoa.
To which I say, girl, oh my God, he's still the Prime Minister.
Yeah. That way.
Some respect. If this did happen, which, by the way, even Zaidi says he cannot verify.
Yeah.
If it did happen, then all the dogs in the area. Once again,
everyone.
What is going on?
Oh, what is this? The Twilight Bark already?
But to have a madam of a brothel and an alleged gangster walk up to the Prime Minister, ask that, all the brothels remain open, well, that would have taken some guts.
Yeah, the thing is, the Sanjay Leela Bhansali movie takes a slightly different position on this. Honestly, we put aside talking about the movie for such a long time. Might as well just get into it now. The thing is, they didn't have the bit about Mrs. Nehru. In a way, she basically sort of says, will you make me your wife? In a cute way. It's not the way you said it.
Right.
Plus, she also asked Nehru to legalize prostitution.
And what does Nehru say?
First he says no. There are other things going on. Russia's right there. So things going on with India generally. If you remember, we still have a massive contraception problem across the country.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, population is rising like crazy. I don't think there's something that he wanted to look into. He says first no. Then he says, okay, I'll set up a committee to look into it.
So still no.
Yeah, it's still a no. Which is so sad because especially when someone in a position of political power says, I'll set up a committee, he's basically saying, you are annoying me. Please leave. The thing is, the movie also deals this pretty weirdly, okay? We sort of treat this committee setup thing kind of like a big win. So Gangubai has this conversation with Nehru, right? And he says, yeah, sure, we'll set up a committee. We'll see what we can do. He. And right after that, when Gangubai goes back to Kamathipura, she gets this huge welcome, okay?
Oh, that's in the trailer as well.
Yeah, it is actually. That's exactly what's in the trailer. And there's signboards and banners and there's a floating installation that she's walking on. There's a whole parade and everything. First of all, Kamathipura has 14 lanes, okay? And they're all this small. If a Bentley didn't fit into it, how the hell is this parade happening? Also, this parade taking 3 minutes. It's so small.
Correct.
And also, why is everyone so happy?
Nothing happened.
Nehru said he'll set up a committee. We've had a data protection committee for the last 7 years.
Oh God!
There's a data protection bill, guys. So Nehru didn't promise to make all their lives immensely better or anything. He just said, we'll see. That's not a win, guys. You should not be celebrating that at all.
I swear. Or maybe it was a dream sequence. It didn't actually happen. Not the committee part, the parade part.
So she died just before that?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a Sanjay Leela Bhansali movie.
This
What do I
became
know?
Requiem for a Dream very quickly.
Yes, exactly. That's what it was. Although I haven't seen Requiem for a Dream.
What? Then how do you respond? No. Just cut this out. This makes no sense now.
Because I read the story.
Terrible. Oh, by the way, guys, if you see references to us making to someone called Chetan, that makes it into the podcast.
Yes.
This Chetan is our editor. We put him through hell on a weekly basis.
We do.
He's a great guy and he's so patient and he sends us music samples all the time. So there are notes that we leave for Chetan here and there,
yes,
which may make it onto the podcast. If it does, just know, Chetan, we love you.
Yes.
And we're sorry for
you are
everything.
the best. Don't leave us.
No, please don't. Anyway, back to Gangubai.
So, unfortunately, Nehru's attitudes towards sex work, although it was progressive and liberal, but it didn't translate to any actual compassion for sex workers.
Yeah.
You remember the Suppression of Immoral Traffic Act of 1956? Well, Nehru's government passed it. But before it passed, Nehru went around talking a whole lot about how clients of sex workers are not penalized and that the blame is placed entirely on the sex worker. So, in fact, in 1923, Nehru spoke before the Allahabad Municipal Board as its chairman, asking for sex workers to be allowed the option of choosing a more honorable career in very heavy quotes.
Right.
He was essentially making the living with dignity argument that the Supreme Court also pushed for.
Yep.
But the legislation was not, that was passed, it didn't take any of this into account. And that would be the case until 1986 amendments, which brought some clarity to the law.
That's so sad. I mean, he clearly felt for sex workers, but I guess the political process is very different from what the Prime Minister wants.
Correct.
Because that was the case, you wouldn't have just a committee. But let's move on to Gangubai herself. What happened with Gangubai?
So Gangubai eventually passed away on 8th September 1977. We know this because it's written on her marble bust, which is found in the lanes of Kamathipura.
Yep.
In fact, her photos were apparently found all over Kamathipura for a time as a kind of tribute to her work and her life. And by the end of her life, she was referred to as Gangu Ma.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's
so from
funny.
Ganga to Gangu to Gangubai and Gangu Ma.
Well, at the point where we're discussing the movie, Gangubai Kathiawadi. Nisha, have you watched it?
I wasn't going to.
Okay.
But then it released on Netflix.
Oh.
And then there's this option on Netflix where you can watch it on like 1.5x speed.
What?
And then also skip all of the songs.
Dude, you watched it on 1.5. How did you understand anything?
Subtitles.
Oh, damn. Fine, okay, whatever. So I watched the movie in 1x, which really honestly felt like 0.025x. Because it was, it's a beautiful movie. It's just I really wish Sanjay Leela Bhansali for one would shoot something in an actual location. I'm so tired of pink skies and these streets
It was so much
that are
blue
so clean.
and and the white. It was like, how much cleaning did these guys have to do?
They didn't do, bro. If this was Kathiawadi, there's no way the streets would have looked like that. Remember in Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum when you were growing up and you thought, oh, Chandni Chowk actually looks like this, huh? It's so
Not
clean.
at all.
I went to Chandni Chowk years later as I think I was 19 or something. It's pretty gross, okay? I mean, the food is great and like it's a beautiful place to visit. Having said that, it's disgusting. Like any major city is. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, why are we get to that?
No, the movie.
The movie, yes, thank you. So I watched the movie with my mom.
Oh.
In the theater, I gave you my money, Sanjay Leela Bhansali. So at the end of the movie, my mom says, and I quote, okay, she says, I already think sex workers are real people. I don't know why the movie was beating me on the head with it. Which I guess makes sense because that really summarizes the movie for all of us.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not the audience for this movie.
Correct.
A large part of this movie sort of tries to drive home the point that sex workers are people. They deserve rights. They deserve rehabilitation. Their children deserve to go to school. They deserve, basic employment benefits. I already know this.
Correct.
But there are people out there who probably don't believe that sex workers are people, including our central government, which outrightly said they don't deserve the right to rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And it's the thing is when you believe that sex workers don't deserve rights or employment benefits or healthcare or social security, you sort of doom not just the women, but the children, the families of these women, trans women who are looking for that level of protection, and the most they can do is enter sex work. Yeah. You sort of doom them to a life, this cycle of poverty and illness, and it's terrible, but that's really what it becomes.
Yeah.
And actually on that note, there's in 2021, 7,000 sex workers in Maharashtra were out of a job because there was a pandemic, right?
Right.
They had no medical insurance, no social security in the middle of the deadliest pandemic in the last century. And many women were unfortunately forced to turn to non-sex work, which, sure, honorable, etc. But they didn't possess the skills for it necessarily. And they had to learn from scratch. Imagine today, Nisha, you have to leave your PR job and become a plumber.
Oh my God, what? There'd be a lot of broken pipes.
They really would. That's true. And also, many of these sex workers had to leave the city with their children just to find a space with lower rent.
Oof. So, are we saying that what Gangubai did was not a bad thing?
Yeah,
yeah.
Even if she had to, resort to...
Yeah. The path was not great. But
even if she had to resort potentially to becoming a mafia, Don woman...
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of understand where she was coming from with this.
Is Dawn a gender neutral word?
I just realized it as I said it. I said Dawn woman and I was like, that does not sound right. It is just Dawn. That's awesome.
Donner. Rap. No, I mean, the both of us completely believe that sex workers deserve much better. They deserve the
course.
right to not work in hazardous conditions. They should have social security, medical health checkups, especially considering the kind of diseases that they could contract that could kill them,
Yeah.
right? And I also think they definitely deserve legalization.
Yeah, they should be asked to pay taxes.
100%.
Honestly, nothing says mainstream like paying taxes for it. If something has GST on it,
Yes.
it's for real. Yeah.
Correct. One more thing. We also know that in February 2022, about 2 weeks before the movie was going to release, a woman claiming to be Gangubai's granddaughter filed a suit to stop the movie's release. She claimed that Gangubai was not a prostitute. Her words, not mine.
All right.
And her depiction was untrue. To quote Bharti Sonawane, the granddaughter, I want to ask him to imagine any mother in the same perspective as he has used to portray my grandmother in the film Gangubai Kathiawadi. How is it justified? This is defamation and I won't tolerate this. She was my grandmother. It wasn't her mistake that she stayed in Kamathipura. Different types of people stay in Kamathipura. So are all women from Kamathipura prostitutes? He has defamed our name. We are not able to show our faces to anyone. Our relatives and peers ask us, "Aisi thi kya aapki nani?" She used to hang out and interact with policemen on a daily basis. She wasn't a prostitute as shown in the film. I feel like if, sex work was legalized at this point and it was just considered as an actual profession, you wouldn't associate so much shame with
so much
it.
shame. Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Right?
Yeah, it didn't have to be so
Yeah.
like, oh, why would defame our name? We can't show our faces. That's
so
just
offended for no reason.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever the reason. But
it wouldn't be so hectic.
Yeah. On that note, don't associate women's honor with,
Yes, thank you.
So she also goes on to diss Hussain Zaidi, which that part I agree with.
Sure, that's fair.
Stating that neither he nor Sanjay Leela Bhansali ever approached for her consent.
All
And
right.
to be fair, we also are very skeptical of Zaidi's work because some of the scenes that are described feels very much like it's a man talking about a man's world where, a woman is trying to make a mark. And so some of the sexual assault scenes are so descriptive and it kind of trivializes the actual emotions and the feelings of the sex worker.
Yep.
And it focuses more on the man's pleasure of, what he sees, which is just ick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also substantiates what we've been saying ever since our podcast started, that we need to tell women's stories from the perspective of women.
Yeah, I agree. Because, this is all, I'm also on the podcast. So the thing is, very often in movies and TV shows and media in general, you can really make out when a woman writes a female character as opposed to when a man writes it. Very stark example, because I watched this movie more recently again, is the movie Suicide Squad, the first one.
Oh, yeah.
There's the character Margot Robbie plays,
Yes.
which is Harley Quinn. Famous DC Batman villain primarily.
Right.
The thing is, that character was written by a man. It's obvious because she comes off as really sleazy and sexed up and they make her intentionally crazy looking and crazy acting.
Yeah.
Sort of in this weird, I love the Joker, he's my whatever, he's the love of my life. It's that kind of a vibe, okay?
Even though he's abusive as hell.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But the same character in this other movie called Birds of Prey, which is sort of like a sequel of sorts to this, focusing on Harley Quinn, right? Harley Quinn's character and the script itself was written by a woman.
Yes.
And she comes off as really complex and empathetic, like a victim of abuse, trying to break out of that relationship. And, she sort of gets through being really badass without having to wear unnecessarily revealing clothing.
Yeah, that's true. I actually I still think she looks sexy as hell, but she's dressed so much better. It's like she chose to dress herself.
Yeah, she doesn't look. That thing they do where they intentionally make women look a little sticky. Who look like that? Aishwarya Rai looked like that in Dhoom 2. I just recently thought about it. I was on Bolly Blinds and Gossip,
oh god,
the subreddit that I love, and somebody posted saying, "Oh, Aishwarya Rai supremacy," and I went back and thought about it. She looked really sticky in that movie because she was made for the male gaze.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And also really skinny.
Yeah.
That was that size zero phase, right?
I think
everyone was
so.
doing size zero.
It's a little unnaturally skinny. I mean, that's great. If that's what she wants, that's great. But then that stickiness.
It is gross.
It was pretty. It was so evident that it was not made for women to appreciate. It's like, dude, look at her. That was the whole point. Yeah.
Yes, correct. But so going back to the story of Gangubai, it kind of remains shrouded in mystery forevermore, I guess. Partly because those who wrote about her failed her phenomenally.
Mhm.
Partly because the ones who knew her were not in a position to translate her story into writing. So in the years
right.
that pass, and as the people who knew her disappear, it's most likely that the movie and Zaidi's book is all that we'll have as a source. And this episode.
Oh,
So,
right, yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, sucks overall. But hey, at least she's immortal, if not necessarily like the real version of her.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh, you want to do a song?
Let's do the song.
Let's do a musical recap.
Listen up, girls. This is a story about the men who did me wrong. You better pay attention now, because there's a lesson here in this song. Here we go. The first boy, well, he sold me for a small fee. Broke down my will and my movie star dreams. Changed me to be Gangubai Kothewali. That's what it's like to be me. The big Don, he gave me justice for a Rakhi. My turn to run my own alcohol scheme. Power of Bombay sexy red light streets. That's what it's like to be me. Oh, I know. I met the Prime Minister and asked him to make me his wife. Oh, but all I really want is to give my girls a better life. A writer claims that he knows my story, made up in a book called Mafia. Queens read it. It's like a man's fever dream. Is that what is left of old me? Let me break it down for you girls. All of us have hopes and dreams and agency. Some of us can earn it right, and some of us fight a nasty fight. Whatever you choose, make sure you write your own story, or a man will do it for you, and it will suck. Or Bollywood. Guess I finally got my movie, played by a 12-year-old female lead. That's what you get with Bhansali. Is that what it's like to be me? Is that what it's like to be me?
Hey, that was pretty cute.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
I mean, I was quite cool, I think. Also, didn't Gangubai just release on OTT?
Yes, it
On
did.
On Netflix, did we capitalize on this?
Yes, we did.
Can we piggyback on the marketing that Netflix is doing with this movie and Alia Bhatt's wedding?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. Let's do the promos in
Yes.
wedding clothes. It's white saris across the board, so
That's
why
true.
not?
That's true. But on a separate note, we wanted to ask our listeners something. So, fellow misconduct listeners.
Do you mean misconduce?
No, I did not mean that. That's disgusting. Anyway, misconduct listeners, would you be interested in purchasing some of our merch?
Did you mean merchasing?
Yeah, okay, I approve of purchasing. So, listeners, if you would like to purchase, please drop us a line on our social media or on email and let us know what you think.
Yeah, so we're considering selling pins or badges, stickers, maybe even mugs.
Mm.
Do you want a tattoo?
What?
I mean, just if you do, we need IBM's permission. We need to figure out with them if you want our logo, but it's possible.
But we will put up a poll in our episode description and you can let us know what you think.
Yes, and if we manage to get enough interest from our misconduce.
No.
Okay, fine. If we get enough merchasing interest,
Fair.
then we'll try to set it up for you guys.
And on that note, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Gangubai Kathiawadi Season 3. We're back, baby!
Yes, that's right. Also, guys, if you can catch Season 3 and all of our other seasons as well on the IVM Podcast Network or anywhere where you get your podcast, just Google misconduct with a space.
Oh, yeah.
And you will find us. It's really not that hard. Also, we have a new Instagram presence.
Yes.
Down at the handle, our handle is Misconduct Pod. It's also in our episode description. Please go follow us.
Yes. Please go follow us for true crime content, updates on podcasts, reels.
Oh, memes. We have memes. You put up memes.
We're going to put up memes, yes. And we will see you on the next episode of Misconduct.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Vaisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders and change makers from across business, media, marketing and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app or wherever you get your podcasts from.